Hi guys, welcome to the last month of the year, December, and December 2025 to be exact, with our latest releases. As you can see, it's quite uh, no, I wouldn't say strange little group, but a different little group of figures. Um, we have some American Revolutionary War figures, some Napoleonics, and going back to the streets of old Hong Kong, some of our Hong Kong figures. Anyway, let's go to the very beginning, which is Revolutionary War figures. Now, as you know, we've released quite a number already, and we've got a few more in the pipeline. What you can see before you here is three additional red coats of the 4th Regiment of Foot, and they're all in different marching positions. So if you want to make up a column or an advancing line, you'll get a set of three here, and you can add on to them and make the line as big or as small as you desire. And obviously, I hope you make it as large as possible because lots of redcoats marching towards the enemy, or in this case, marching towards the American rebels, is always exciting and visually exhilarating as well. So we've got these three 4th Regiment of Foot guys marching. Now, what's not shown here, but you'll see a clip on to this, will be the two flag bearers, which is the regimental flag bearers, one with the regimental flag and one with the King's colour. Those are back at the factory just now for some minor amendments, but we'll let you see the photographs of those separately. So look out for those two really nice figures, and they're sold individually. But this set here is a set of three figures. Now, opposing them is one that we missed out in that earlier release of George Washington's Bodyguard company, and that is the Sergeant Non-Commissioned Officer here. Now, as you can see, he's armed with a pistol that he's obviously aiming at his opponents, and he's carrying the sword as well. So that is a nice little addition to George Washington's Bodyguard Regiment. Now, let's move away from 1776 and the years that followed that to a couple of decades later. And now we're at the war in the peninsula during the Napoleonic Wars. And what we have here are 12 additional figures for our Sharpe's 95th rifles. Now, they're really interesting little grouping. So let's start at the front here. And what we get three different action figures, uh, obviously lying prone, firing his Baker rifle. Then next to him is another figure kneeling with his Baker rifle at the ready. And finally, the 95th Rifles wearing the forage cap, and he is also kneeling but aiming at the enemy. Three nice little additions to what's gone before. Now, behind them is five advancing figures led by this officer who's looking through his telescope. This is actually based on a figure we did several years ago. And again, we had quite a few requests for that figure with the release of the last batch of 95th Rifles. So we decided to come up with I think a better sculpted figure than we did before with a lot more detail. So similar pose to what we released before, but with additional details for that. Next to him is our sergeant figure. Now he's the first of two signalers. The sergeant is actually using a metal whistle, which was kind of unique to the rifle regiment because that was used to send out certain orders over the din of battle. Uh, anyway, we've not done that before, so we wanted to do an NCO with a whistle, and he's obviously carrying his Baker rifle to the right of him. Next to him is a bugler. Now, even today, the rifle regiments of the British Army still operate bugles. And again, that was to send different commands around the battlefield or to form different formations. So he's advancing forward, rifle in his left hand, bugle in his right. Next to him are two more riflemen. Now you'll see again a little bit difference. This time they have their sword bayonet attached to their Baker rifle, and they're moving forward. And of course, one is wearing the typical shako, whereas the other has a forage cap. Again, two nice little additions to that. At the rear here are four standing figures that were really inspired by those Osprey books that we've used for many, many years. The Osprey series on different military units is absolutely essential for anyone that loves military history but wants some visual information about what the soldiers actually looked like. So we've used those Osprey titles, especially the ones referring to the rifle regiments of the British Army, as the source and inspiration for these four different figures. Again, we have a sergeant here in the centre with, again, Baker rifle and sword bayonet fixed. Next to him is a corporal. We've never done a corporal before, but we have him standing here. And next, on the other side of the sergeant, is the chosen man. Chosen men were similar to what we call a lance corporal in the British Army of today. And they were really chosen because they performed well on the battlefield. They were seen to be potential to be non-commissioned officers, but this was the first stage. And what marked them, we didn't have the rank of Lance Corporal, one stripe, but what we did have was a white band that would be attached to the right arm, which this chap has, and he is also wearing the forage cap. And finally, always a useful character, we've got one more rifleman, and he is biting the paper cartridge to release the ball and then the gunpowder to reload his rifle. So altogether, 12 figures, great additions to the existing Sharpe's 95th rifles. And before anybody asks, well, where are some of the more flamboyant characters from the television series? We're working on those as well, but they'll be released in 2026. And there'll be some really nice add-ons for that series. So look out for that. But in the meantime, you've got these 12 to add on to those that have been already released. Turning from the Napoleonic Wars of the early 19th century to a schoolroom in the late 19th century, roughly around 1897, which was 100 years before Hong Kong reverted back to Chinese rule. But of course, uh, the Hong Kong population, which is even then was more than 95% Chinese, had great reverence for education, and that continues to this day. But in fact, schools were first established in China itself 1600 years before the birth of Christ. So that shows you that education has always been the key to advancement in Chinese society. And in fact, in those days, if you wanted to work for the government, you had to pass very strenuous examinations to get into the Chinese civil service. But of course, that bled into the general population as well. And many schools were set up, private institutions, both in China and later in Hong Kong itself. So this set here is called the Chinese classroom, but it's very typical of some of the early classrooms in Hong Kong dating back to the 1890s. So what we have here is this set, by the way, comes with this little three-dimensional setting, but the set itself also includes the teacher himself and a grey-haired teacher who's obviously reading from some classical text. And next to him is the teacher's table, teacher's chair, and right down, you might be able to see it, is um, a beautiful blue and white stone jar that contains a whole selection of scrolls, perhaps with the teachings of Confucius or some other aspect of Chinese history. By the way, the map that's standing here in the background shows an old map dating back to the 1890s of Hong Kong Island itself. So we've got a classical map of Hong Kong. Right at the front, we've got 6 desks, 6 pupils, and they're all paying attention to the teacher with, shall we say, varying degrees of sensibility. Right in the front here is this little chap here who's obviously either having his homework read or I don't know whether he's done anything wrong, but anyway, he's standing in front of the teacher, looking very obedient, hands clasped behind his back. For all I know, he might even be reading a traditional poem. However, in the background are some of his classmates. Now, here we've got a very diligent pupil who's consulting his books. Next to him is someone else who's watching the whole proceedings, but not causing any mischief. However, at the back of the class, we've got, unfortunately, one of the pupils is maybe been doing too much homework and is feeling a wee bit tired, so he's having a nap on his desk. And right at the back, we get the two troublemakers. We've got one guy who's obviously insulting one of his classmates, and his classmates replying, about to hit him with a textbook over the head. Great little set, very colourful. Um, Nothing's ever's been done quite like this, but it was fun doing all this research for the Chinese classroom, and we put it all together in one complete set, and that will also be available this December. So, not a huge amount of figures, no vehicles or aircraft this month, but lots of other choices. And again, remember the two flag bearers you'll get a closer look at later in this broadcast. So that's the story so far. But before I go, I'd just like to say that I'm off on my travels again. I leave, I think, on the 30th of November, Sunday, the 30th of November, and my first stop is Paris, France. Actually, I don't know why I need to say Paris, France. I know there's the Paris, Texas, but I think when we hear the word Paris, we know they're talking about France. Anyway, I'll be joining the folks from Figurines and Collection. They are having a 2 day special event in Paris for collectors from not just Paris, but from all over France and even further apart. Um, we often have some of our friends who come in from Germany and even Lebanon who fly all the way to Paris just for this special event. It's a whole day uh, event, and it's held in the town of Nanterre, which is one of the suburbs of Paris, very easy to get to. And I'll be there, I think, on the second, all day on the 2nd of December. So if any of you see this in La Belle France, I sincerely hope you come and meet us at the special event. You can get all the details of the event and the full address from Philippe and Valerie of Figurines and Collection. So look out for their website and find out the details. I hope I'll see as many of you as I normally do. It's great fun. And I always love visiting Paris, but I'm not there for too long because a couple of days later, I'll be taking the Eurostar to London, and there I'll be joining Stefano of Cymex at the December London Toy Soldier Show. This is always a fantastic event. We'll be taking a few things to preview that are coming out in both January and February 2026. And I'll be also showing off a special display we have of our new landing craft that will also be at the London show and at the Paris show also. As I say, the London show is held on, I believe, Saturday, the 6th of December. Great show, tons to see, well worth a visit. So if you can brave through the crowds of London, and hopefully the be fairly cold weather, I think, but you'll be able to see myself and my wife Lisa at that show. And look out for us on the Cymex tables with Stefano of Cymex and his daughter Gaia. I can guarantee a good time will be had by all. So that's the little itinerary so far. But I'd also like to mention, adding on to this video, I'm going to be doing a special little video of a new series I want to call King and Country's Hidden Treasures. And this will basically cover all kinds of subject matter that K&C have done both in the distant past and the not so distant past, even more recently. But sometimes, again, there are things that slip by a lot of collectors that maybe have not been appearing in videos or other things, but series that I think are great figures, and I'll be able to talk a little bit about an individual series or part of a series that we introduced a few years ago that I think some of you might find interesting. So look out for King and Country's Hidden Treasures, which will be following this. Okay. Well, once again, many thanks. And let me take this opportunity to wish everyone a very, very Merry Christmas and a peaceful, prosperous, and healthy new year. All the very best, and cheers. Hi, guys. Welcome to a new series of videos that I'm calling Hidden Treasures. And that refers to the fact that over the years, King Country has produced a huge number of different series of figures and ranges that cover all aspects of history. And some of these are very well known, some lesser known. And it's one of the lesser known campaigns generally that I'd like to draw your attention to today. And that was the Battle for Poland in September 1939. Now, as some of you will know, um, Hitler on 31st of August 1939 issued an order to his armies to attack Poland the following day. Now, this not only introduced a whole new kind of warfare that we can call blitzkrieg or lightning war, and this was the combined force of armor, infantry, and aerial attacks on an enemy. And in 1939, this was shown to the world for the very first time when the Germans attacked Poland. Now, they actually attacked with 3 different armies, numbering about 1 million men. They had a huge force of tank divisions that they used. They had a massive air force, the Luftwaffe, that used bombers and dive bombers like the famous Stuka to attack from the air and almost to be used as aerial artillery to help defeat the enemy. And the idea anyway of blitzkrieg was a rapid advance. And in this case, these 3 German armies used the armored forces of tanks and armored cars to race ahead of the rest of their troops. And if they came to major Polish defences, to almost ignore them and keep going to get behind the Polish front lines. At the same time, they used their dive bombers and bombers to attack Polish airfields to destroy as much of the Polish Air Force on the ground as they could, but at the same time to bomb Polish defense positions and shatter any possible counterattacks that would be put in against them. So we decided to produce a series of figures, in this case, Polish cavalry and Polish infantry that were used to defend the country and attack the German invaders. Now, part of the problem was, although the Poles were incredibly brave, sadly, their army was relatively outdated. For instance, they still had 12 full brigades of cavalry, and only one of those cavalry brigades was actually an armored brigade, but they only had light tanks, which basically were almost useless against the new German tanks that they were coming up against. So we decided to concentrate on some cavalry figures that you see here. And by the way, the reason for this French Adrian helmet that's in the background here, and this is an actual World War II Adrian helmet, was that the Polish cavalry in particular were equipped with the same style of helmet. You'll also see these infantry figures there. Again, I stress the fact that the Poles were incredibly brave, but it's awfully hard to go up against modern, German tanks with swords and lances that were almost from a bygone age. However, the Poles did the very best they could, and but within 2 weeks of the invasion, the Germans were on the outskirts of Warsaw, the Polish capital, which they then besieged. Not only did they besiege it with their heavy artillery, but they used their Luftwaffe to bomb the capital city into smithereens. So that was around the 16th of September. What made things worse is on the 17th of September, as the Poles had the vast majority of their army fighting the Germans in the west, the Soviets invaded from the east. And this was all part of a master plan that had been concocted by Hitler and Stalin to basically destroy Poland in its entirety. And they did that very effectively. Amazingly, Warsaw itself managed to hold out for another 2 weeks before it surrendered on the 27th of September. Anyway, that was part of the inspiration. I'd read a lot of stories about the opening parts of the Second World War. And although it was a very short campaign, it had some amazing escapades. And we decided to depict that with our Polish cavalry figures and our Polish infantry. Now, as it happened, by the end of the campaign, when it really finished and the Poles had surrendered, the beginning of October 1939, almost 700,000 Polish troops had surrendered to the Germans, and the Russians took over 217,000 more Polish troops that went into the not very gentle hands of the Russians at the end of the campaign. Somehow, about 10,000 Polish troops managed to escape. I believe they did some of it through Hungary and neighboring countries, and eventually ended up in France. And France itself formed several Polish brigades of free Poles that would then come into contact with the Germans again in May 1940, when Hitler and his forces launched the invasion of Western Europe. So again, these are some of the figures that we've designed. I think are some of the best figures, action figures that King Country has ever produced. And if you just look at the animation, especially on the cavalry figures, I think they're great. So you'll see 6 different cavalry figures, including this one here. There's obviously casualties coming off his horse. And in the background, just behind him, you'll see a dead horse and a dismounted Polish cavalry officer taking on a German soldier. Down the front here, which again is interesting, is a Polish infantry. And what's of interest is that the Polish rifles, for the most part, were German Mauser rifles, similar to what the Germans themselves had. And it's kind of interesting that some bits of Polish equipment had obviously been either bought from the Germans or ended up in Polish hands, maybe after the First World War. So what you've got here, nice little collection of Polish figures. What I'd urge you to do is take a second look at these figures. You'll find that we still have some on our website, and you can have a look and see if there's anything that you might like to explore. It's a very interesting campaign. It's well worth reading about. So this little collection of hidden treasures, this is the first time that many people may have seen them. Have a look and see if there's something that you would like in your collection. And they're very good value as well. So on that cheerful note, have a look at the invasion of Poland in September 1939. Find out a bit more about it and see what you think. Anyway, I'll leave it at that for the moment. Until the next time, have a look at the hidden treasures, and I hope to show you some more in the near future. Thanks. Bye.